Listen, it's great to be back with you. Um, do you hear the birds? I don't know if you'll hear the birds now. Wished. Oh, I hope you can pick that fella up. It's just lovely to hear them. And just coming up, I suppose, today, 18th of June, 3 or 4 days, we're at midsummer. And same as the solstice in the winter, I think it's a great time. God, it's beautiful, that bird, I have to say. He's distracted me. I've left the door open. This is the studio shed in Leitrim. It's kind of a big high ceiling, so when you have the microphone is on in a way that I want to hear the bird. But then as I hear the bird, he's distracting me. And I want to go out there. And that kind of feeling comes on you in the summer. Sometimes I get up out of the bed and I just want to get out of the house in a joyful way. It's like your body wants to greet the sun. And the fact that the sun is there from whatever it is, an early hour in the morning, it just kind of really stimulates you. And you get into an emotional connection with it. And I think it's healing. I think it's very, very healing if you've, physical or mental worries. The sun can be a powerful healer. And maybe it's very, very difficult if you're in bed in summertime. So if anybody is, like bed bound or stuck in a room where because of health issues you can't actually get outside, my heart goes out to you. I have been there. This relates a little bit to the column I wrote for the Irish Times on Wednesday. And maybe I'll just begin what I want to talk about today, about how we see ourselves as able or disabled. Let me just begin by reading the column. Being ill is like forgetting who you were. You get lost in a forest of unease, and it's difficult to remember life before the catastrophe. Fortunately, I seem to be emerging from the forest. For 3 months I could see only fog in my left eye, but thanks to a surgical procedure I can gaze at flowers once again with both eyes, which is a little miracle. I feel so good, I'm even trying to reinvent myself. Last month I did a gig in Dublin with some amazingly talented young artists. The singer A.E. Mack was on the bill, and just before my spot she gave a stunning rendition of Chelsea Hotel. I had prepared a monologue about a rural bachelor, but by the time A.E. Mack had dazzled the audience, I realised my whinging recitation would be out of place. So I sang The Rocks of Bawn instead, a ballad suitable enough for Methuselah. It's the dirge of a clearly depressed male singing about another depressed male, but people love it. So I gripped the microphone fearlessly and gave it socks. When I got the bus pass a few years ago, I still paid bus fares because I didn't want anyone to think I was old. I considered myself youthful until a pregnant woman stood up in a tram one day and offered me her seat. But I don't hide my seniority any longer. Nowadays I wear a flat cap, also known as a paddy cap, and I flaunt it. I wasn't even embarrassed last week when a neighbour drove me to Galway for a checkup with the ophthalmic surgeon, the eye doctor as we used to say. Although my neighbour drove erratically, alternating her foot between the accelerator and the brake every 15 seconds. It was a hybrid Toyota, and she was trying to stay in electric mode to save petrol. I was worried I might need neck surgery by the time we reached Galway. Do you not realize I have a detached retina, says I. If you continue taking your foot on and off the pedal, my eye is liable to fly out and hit the windscreen. In the clinic, I sat in a waiting area watching the war in Ukraine on TV. The old people around me discussed the dreadful weather, while the young ones remained aloof, their fingers glued to dainty keyboards on mobile phones. It's the cuckoo's fault, an old man declared. I beg your pardon? The storm, he explained. There's always a spell of rough weather this time of year. My mother used to say it was nature taking revenge on the cuckoo. I thanked him for the information and secretly regretted I hadn't brought me earphones. But at least the prognosis from the doctor was good. The retina was healing. So I suggested to me driver that we go shopping in the city to celebrate. She agreed, and while she headed off to the big stores, I slipped down the side streets in search of vintage clothes. I was fingering my way through tweed jackets to see if I could find a large size when a man stumbled into the shop as if he had been wrestling with some addictive demon. He headed for the crockery and the second-hand bookshelves. His bony fingers slithered along one shelf, and I feared he might knock everything down. The shop assistant noted his confusion and got up close behind him. His ivory fingers reached out and clutched a candle, as if it were an anchor in a storm, and he was an unmoored boat. "What's this?" he wondered, not recognizing the object. "It's a candle," the shop assistant said from behind. He couldn't comprehend where he was, never mind what was on the shelf. He may even have been uncertain as to where the other voice was coming from. "A candle," he whispered, still holding it, as if it were liable to jump into the air. "A smelly candle," she said, lightening the moment. "Ah, right," he exclaimed, because now he understood. And he held it as if he were remembering some long-ago country where he was happy or innocent or at peace. "That's right," he mumbled, smiling. "A smelly candle." It struck me that there must have been a time when he was safe and secure, a single day when a fragrant candle flickered before him in some room that he had long ago forgotten. But I looked away because I didn't want to appear as if I was staring. And that's the column I wrote last week. And I wrote it heartfeltly about that lovely and poor creature, as I said, demented by some kind of demons, addictive demons. I'd be meaning drugs by saying addictive, and I'd be meaning demons by saying demons. You know, there's various ways that people talk in modern psychiatry about the condition of the human mind. And too often we dismiss the old desert fathers when they used to be talking about demons. And it seems to me, maybe because I'm a storyteller, that I actually love the sense of demons. You know, demons are like little bad energies. But when you kind of mythologize them into sort of beings, you can actually talk to them, and I think that you can tell them to go away. When I was suffering from, let's say, depression, let's call that a demon. Let's say that there was a particular demon. And I used to sometimes embody this demon as Dracula. In my writing, in my books, I'd sometimes talk about the fact that, you know, depression was like feeling that Dracula was holding you by the throat. You couldn't nearly speak. It was that intense. He was all over your body. and that gradually as I improved, it was like Dracula was in the room, in the corner of the room, but he couldn't come near me, but he was still in the room. And I used to kind of find it very helpful to personify my depression in that way. And eventually I was able to say, people would say, do you still get depressed? Are you fully recovered? I'd say, well, I think Dracula's still out in the garden. And it was a way of measuring the fact that the danger of depression overpowering me was getting further away. Very simple thing to do. We do it for children all the time, not because children are stupid, but because they're actually very intelligent but simple, and they get the direct message of a demon, and that's easy for them to grasp as a sort of a real thing, even though it's an embodiment in metaphysical language of something that we would now put in psychological language. And the danger with psychological language is exactly the same danger as medieval people had with religious language or the language of mythology. And that is that even in psychological language, you can take it literally. And people talk now about their conditions, as if they're talking about sort of scientific facts. But it doesn't help sometimes when a human being wants to embody their own melancholy, when they want to become who they are no matter what that person is, or to take ownership on the anger within them. You can have psychological cause and effect narratives, how one thing led to another and how really all your problems were caused by somebody else in your childhood. But those are very, very valid things, very real things, the way that our parents can do damage to us. Teachers can do damage. Other people or adults. They're very real. And they're part of the narrative. They are, if you like, you're a product of those times, but there was a great phrase in the 70s that used to say, you are a product of your history, but not a prisoner of your history. And one of the ways to release yourself from history, if you have a damaged history, is by therapy, is by conversation. Another way, it seems to me, is by the old-fashioned prayerful ways, to seek from the mentor deity a sense of help and assistance. Lord, help me. I mean, I have said that so often in the past week. And not because I'm desperate or depressed, but just because I've found it a natural way to dialogue with the world around me, to cope with the mystery of being. I got a letter from a fellow yesterday. I was reading it this morning. And he said, our pathways are similar in life. He said, I think that we've both, landed on the same conclusions. And I wrote back to him this morning, and I was joking, but I was saying, I think our pathways are similar, but I just haven't got to as many conclusions. And then I quoted the Heart Sutra, and I paraphrased it. I said, to paraphrase the Heart Sutra, the ultimate conclusion is that there is no conclusions. You don't wrap life up. And there is no situation where the naming of something gives you a conclusion that will fulfill you. There's always more space beyond the words of mystery. And how can you dialogue with the mystery? How can you dialogue with the metaphysical world, if you like, or the invisible world of meaning, if you like, call it what you want, but how do you dialogue? And all I'm saying is that in my personal experience, and it is as a storyteller, mythologizing it with the mentor deity is profoundly enriching and helpful. To be able, when I see that I'm able to give myself permission to believe in the beautiful poetry of the Christian tradition, that I believe in Christ or whatever. It just makes, it's like the center of the flower, the mysterious, the whole universe around me now in the midsummer is kind of revealing itself, flourishing like a flower, like a bloom. And at the center of everything, the way the center of the flower, if you look into a flower and you look into the heart of the flower, it almost makes your body tingle. I don't know what it does. That visual message going through your eyes, going through your brain, that sense that you're absorbing, not just the edges of the flower, the beautiful colour of the flower, all the things that draw you towards the flower, and yet you're looking at the middle of it, that really, where it's in the very centre, and what's there, and the nectar of what's there draws you to it. Okay, well, if you take the whole world that's around me at the moment, like the lake and the mountain that's out there beyond the door, and all the kind of trees around me, and all the kind of towns that are 5 kilometres away, and all the people in the towns. You just take the whole cosmos reaching, and then Ireland, and it's surrounded by the waters of the Atlantic, and then all of Europe, and then all of the Western world, and then the whole globe itself, and then start to widen it out into the whole cosmos, right? So now I think of this cosmos, the whole thing, as if it was a single flower. Now, I'm at the center. I'm at the center. There's something here, right in the middle of this moment, which is like the center of the unfolding cosmic flower. And that's extraordinary. And the only way I can deal with that is to say, what is that nectar? What is that kind of center of it? How can I materialize it in language? I say Buddha, I say Christ, I say Mary, I say whatever is that deity that opens your heart to the relationship of wonder with the cosmos, knowing that you are at the center of it. So you might say, if you were, Dawkins or somebody, you'd say, well, you're not actually at the center of it. You're very foolish to be thinking that. And scientifically, he is right, or he may be right, at a very scientific and rational level. But I know, and so does he, and so does everybody who studies consciousness and relativity, that being conscious has a strange relativity that you always have the sensation of being at the center. Your consciousness is being present here. Your consciousness is not present elsewhere. You're always here. And that is the secret to coming into that moment. Be here now. That's the door that opens. That's where you begin to feel you're like a tiny bee on the top of the flower, at the very center of it. So you might as well say there's 3 things I'm thinking about. One is that consciousness invites us into the present moment, being here, embodied physically and consciously. And then the second thing is using Christ, using Buddha, Allah, whatever your mentor deity is, using that personification as the very center of the flower, of this cosmic flower, this awakening of some great singularity of flowering being embodied, and there at the center. Where is it? Where you are. You're at the center. It's an amazing idea. And you experience otherness from this beautiful flower. by putting your Christ at the very center of it. So it's like a marriage, it's like a union of lovers. You and Christ, you and the other, united secretly in this moment that is completely private. It's just you in your conscious mind. And you gather yourself into that awareness and awakening of the Christ with you. And that's it, in a sense. I mean, I started this thinking about your man in the shop. And he was afflicted by demons, if you like, demons of addiction. He didn't know where he was. He was really suffering, He was suffering there before my eyes in a second-hand clothes shop. And the candle did comfort him, and when the woman was nice to him and she was cheerful, she made a joke, what's the candle? She said, a smelly candle. Ah, he got it. He was probably thinking like candle means in the dark lighting candle, or in a church, what's this about? What's this for sale for? And she said smelly candle, meaning like fragrance and, bath oils and soft music, all that. And something there he remembered, he recognized, and you could hear him chuckling to himself and saying, ah, yeah, a smelly candle. And as I said, it was like, there was no doubt that somewhere along the line he was in a room where there was peace and joy. A room he'd long forgotten. And that candle was a moment just where he was able to touch that moment again. And I think that, what I'm looking at there with him is like somebody where he's so surrounded by the dark clouds, he's so surrounded by the demons that they're sucking him dry, they're sucking his consciousness, they're not allowing him to be calm and to meditate. He's on the run, he's being hunted by them. And yet there was a time where he was fine. I suspect before he got afflicted by such awful stuff, whether I would presume it would be alcohol or drugs. I mean, there was an energy from him that you would be forgiven for presuming that was the case. But there was also, you could sense, a time that man's life where he was completely happy, maybe in his youth, and that's what happens. Like the darkness encroaches on us, and we fight against it. And sometimes we use words like demons, which are really, really a powerful way to personify evil or darkness and put it at a distance. But one of the real things that makes me enthusiastic about sharing with you and doing these meditations, and I feel such gratefulness to be able to share it with you, is that at 68 years of age, I think that it's worth saying that prayer does work, and that you can understand it in secular terms or in religious terms, and you can develop a prayer life as a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Jew, whatever, a Buddhist, doesn't matter. But the journey of the prayer is the key. And today I'm leaving you with that single image, that the entire cosmos, in all the galaxies, the infinity of it, as it's unfolding, is in a present moment where you are now. So it's as if all the unfolding of that amazing flower that is the universe is unfolding, and the center of it is where you are and what you're experiencing. And then when you put the kind of mentor deity of Buddha or Jesus at the center of that, like here is the center of the entire flower, and it is the presence of Christ. Well, now we're close to what Teilhard de Chardin, the great guy in the 1950s, great theologian, he used to talk about this, the cosmic Christ, the Christ who is to come. It's as if all hope, all imagined perfections were going to be wrapped up in one beautiful thing, one moment. And that moment is already here at the center. It's only there when you come to it, when you bring yourself into the present moment, I think you'll feel it. I think you sense when you come into the present moment, do it mindfully, do it with mindful practice, whatever, but do it, practice it 10 minutes a day or whatever, and you come to that moment of being present, and you will immediately find there's a threshold in your consciousness, a threshold beyond which there's a sense that the conscious energy is actually not you, not your ego, but is other than you coming towards you. You realize that prayer is beyond the threshold, and you've entered this new space of being present where you're actually receiving what's present. And that's it. The unfolding universe as one single amazing flower. Think of yourself at the very center, the heart of that flower. Well, that's where you get to when you practice being here, now, when you practice being present. That's what's special here. And thank you for being here. Bye-bye.